Hello, everybody. I am your hostess, TheLetsPlayPrincess. Welcome to the first ever Maya video. I talked about this on another website, and a few people voted yes on a poll about if I should do this. I thought about doing this for a while, and it got some traction, so this is what we're doing. I am a Let's Player. You guys know that, but I went to school for computer animation and game design, so I do know some of the things that I'm talking about. Am I perfect at everything? No. Do I know what half these buttons do? No. Do most people who use Maya know what half the buttons do? No. My teachers didn't know everything. I would constantly ask questions like, what does this do? Will this help? And all that. And they're just like, to be honest, we never used that while working on all the games we did, blah, 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 blah. The school that I went to, one of the teachers, the guy who created the program, by which I mean the degree program, the whole Get an Associates in Computer Animation and Game Design, worked at GE, kind of worked with certain things when it came to video games, didn't work at a video game company, but still said, hey, the school should have a game design program because we're talking about these 2000s kids and they know video games and a lot of them want to do it. So the school did it. It got a lot of traction. The other teacher is a person who worked on Goblin Commander and some fucking Tom Clancy jet fighting game. Most of the things I'm going to be talking about are the coding side, because coding is one of the biggest flexible positions when it comes to Maya and how Maya works. And what I mean is, if you make a character, you can do a lot of different things to start with. You can start with a sphere, or you could start with a fucking, a cube or whatever. One of the things that we learned was let's see if I can remember certain things. Now, I'm only using a touchpad. I don't have a mouse with me, so that drives me insane. And I am a type of person who likes it rounded up to 2 digits over here. I'm crazy, okay? But one of the things... Oh, and I just used the F button to do it. Some tutorial stuff, by the way. This is your width. This is your height. This is your depth. Clearly. Subdivisions. Subdivisions are divides on it, like that. Which means if I do this 3, 3, and 3, I can easily make a Rubik's Cube. Like I said, this is coding, so I could easily do something like make each side a different color. Or I could go to my UV, which is taking a 3D object and making a 2D unfolded paper version of the object, which you can then take into something like Photoshop, take your Wacom tablet, fiddle around with it, and re-import it into Maya as the thing's new UV with all of its, drawn on colors and shit, and 3D object will be 100% colored. You can do stuff like that. There is a paint system inside of Maya. It's not as good unless you have a shit ton of subdivisions and stuff on your character, because the more detailed, how many edges you have and faces and all that you have, the more detailed a UV unwrap is, the better the painting is. You're painting directly onto the 3D model, not onto the UVs. So, like I said, everything is doable in a way that you want to do it. You can do it many different ways, and you can teach yourself all these different ways to do it. You can follow the books, you can teach yourself, you can watch videos like this one. There are so many different ways to do these things. There is no right way. The best way I can explain that is, and like I said, we're going to be talking about more of coding, and I'll show you some of the examples that in each video I'll do like an example that we had to do and why I did it the way that I did it and everything. And it'll hopefully help you if you're a student and this is one of your assignments, be able to do it the way you want to do it. So, fuck me, what was I crap. Yeah, there's many different ways to do everything. You can do the Hawk Diggity type of, teaching yourself. And Hawk Diggity Demon does amazing things with Maya. So, I mean, it's good. There's so many different ways. So, right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here. And, I don't want this one. Well, actually, I kind of do, but I kind of don't. And you're going to say, what the fuck is this shit? So, I'm going to explain something about coding right now. This is the first video. This is the introduction to Maya and the introduction to coding. All of your coding files are always going to want to start with this. This is the code that specifically states, hey, this is a new file. Whenever this piece of code gets executed, a new window is created, a new document. Like a new Word document is created. It's doing file new. That's all that is. But it's one of the most important things you should do. Though, to be fair, one of the most important things you should do when starting stuff is realizing the difference between a scene and a project. A project is the major folder that all of your shit goes in. It could be your character or your game or whatever. Scenes are separate animations. Your jump animation, your run animation, a level, the trees in a level that you then import into. There are sub-scenes that you import into other scenes. When you when you make a project, you always have to make a project first. You go to project window, and you always decide, you always go new, and you set up a location, and you name it, and then you just hit accept. Don't fuck with any of this stuff. You never have to mess with anything here. Whenever you set a project, what you are specifically doing is saying, Maya, for now on, until I next tell you otherwise, only look at this specific folder. Now, right now, it should be set to mill scripting. Okay? So if I go to scenes, right there, you go to edits, it will show nothing. That's because this is a Mel scripting folder. This project was specifically made for Mel scripting class. All of your bits of code are saved in quote-unquote Word documents called scripts. So all my scripts are here. These are my teacher's ones. These are all, mine. Blah, 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 blah. Okay? Good. Next thing you need to know. Yellow text versus red text. It's very important. Red text is a single line comment. It is a line of code that is specifically just you making a mental note to yourself or to another person. You notice I have a lot of yellow lines. I did this specifically because I personally, when I code, I like subdividing what I'm doing. For example, this project right here was to make a bunch of pipes and cylinders. The amount is determined by a user via a dialog box. When they get spawned, they will be spawned as rigid bodies. A rigid body is a body that it has a physical property and it can be interacted with. And they spawn on random locations on the X and Z axis. Then I animate a cube hitting them. Bonus points for coloring the cylinders and pipes. It was supposed to be randomly. So create a plane that is passive. Passive means that while it is a physical being, it does not interact physically with the world. What I mean is a floor. If you stand on a floor, you are physically standing on a floor, you will not pass through it. If you punch a floor, the floor does not flip over. For the most part, you could be on a table. But on, the planet Earth, if you punch it, you don't suddenly flip the entire Earth that you're on upside down. The Earth is passive. You interact with it, it does not interact back. Rigid means if I were to, say, push a book, if I were to go and slap my hand against a book, it doesn't stay there like the wall would. It falls over. That's a big example. So I make, personally, and you don't have to do this, again, this is all about what you want to do. This is why it's so flexible. But personally, I made yellow lines of code, which are multi-steps, multiple lines of code. See, you can see how it's like a couple paragraphs, while this one is just one line. It's line 22. They are branched off with this icon and this icon. And red is the double dashes. That's all it is. We'll use this as the example of the first video. I really wanted to do the double because the W, because the W is one of the most proudest things I have in my collection. But we'll start here. And I also probably should have wrote a script for this, but I didn't, so I'm kind of rambling. So there's a lot of stuff that's going to be in this, and I'm going to try and get this as quickly as possible. One of the most amazing things you're going to learn to start off with when reading this, because you'll see I have a plane, which is a flat 2D piece of land. You can make it into a wall, you can make it into a floor, you can make it into whatever the fuck you want to make it. The question then becomes, how do you know what these are? Now, I personally know that's with height, subdivision, axis turning, I believe, curvature, and something else. You never really mess with these ones. You only want to mess with this stuff. How do you know what these are? And the answer is really simple. I'm going to quickly clear the top row. So you can see there's nothing there. I didn't clear down here. If we cleared down there, I would have been in serious trouble. Now, if I go back to normal Maya, okay. And let's say I summon the plane, which is right there. I have a plane. If I go back over here, it specifically tells me what was accomplished. This is one of the most important icons in programming, period, in C++, in Mel, and a few others. That's pretty much the coding version of a period. That is that the sentence is complete. Please read the sentence aloud and do what it says. Function. It tells us what we just did with the mouse in code version. And I could easily just copy and paste that down here and then fuck around with the digits I needed to, which is what I did. And there's an extremely viable way of doing it. If you want to save every single possible thing, every single sphere, the cube, the cylinder, the cone, the plane, the torus, the pyramid, and the pipe, you can do that. You can save them in a Word document. Nobody will tell you you don't have to. Nobody will tell you you shouldn't. Nobody should tell you any of that. Because that is a viable strategy. Because one of the best things about code is that stuff that you write now can be used later on. If you work on a project and you make an extremely good S-curve with a pipe, and then months later you have to work on a completely separate project and have to make a pipe or an S-curve or whatever that correlates in some way to that original project from months before, you can absolutely copy and paste the code that you wrote beforehand into this new project. That is a viable option. Why write something again when you've written it before? That's one of the most powerful things about coding. Once you've done it once, you can copy and paste it over and over. And again, it's all about the flexibility. It's all about making sure that you don't have to change extremely big things if you need to do something new. A big example of this will be in the wall video. I'll talk about it then. It probably will be the next video I do, as well as the W. Those will be two separate videos. So, what we do here is, step one, complete. Step one was to make the plane. So all we did was we copied the plane, we made it big, and we made it into a rigid body. Now right here it says passive. You could easily type the word rigid right there, and it instantly turn the thing into rigid. Passive and rigid bodies are both technically the same thing. They're both rigid bodies. The only difference between a rigid and a passive, it's like saying a light switch is a light switch. It's just a matter of, is it on or off? And that highlighted bit right there is the on and off switch. That's all that is. Step one's complete right there. And if I play that out and I minimize this, we have a plane that is, I should say 80 somewhere. Fucking shit. Somewhere. I don't know. The reason why it creates time is because everything in Maya, no matter what, always has a time bar to it, and you can play it. But right now, nothing has animation on it. I will explain animation in a much later video if I ever decide to do an animation sub-series of this whole thing. So, next, the pipes. Now, this little thing right here is setting up a number. That's like the number sign for a fucking programming thing. That is specifically saying, hey, store a number here. There are two types. And I don't know if the other one appears in this. It does not. I don't think I used it, and I just remembered what it was called. Ha ha ha, because I'm remembering stuff as I do this. So you can have integers and you can have floats. Here's the difference. An integer, no matter what, is a whole number. You cannot put a decimal in there. A float can have a decimal. So integers include 1, 2, 3, 4. Floats include 1.5, 1/4, 7/8, etc., etc., etc. So this is saying there is an integer. We will call it pipe num, which I am calling it pipe num because it's short for number of pipes. Okay? So then a string. Now this stuff is stuff I don't remember. You don't have to remember it. Pretty much this is just going to be copied and pasted, and you just change the title and the message. Okay? Okay. So you have a string. And the string are words. So it's saving a word into a, let's call it a subfolder called text. How about that? This is pretty much x equals blah and word x equals blah. So you have string pipe equals a prompt dialog. That just means, hey, summon a dialog box. Title, number of pipes. Message, how many pipes would you like? And then it summons two buttons. Oh god. Okay and cancel. And then the default button, the good button, will be okay. Sorry. And the cancel button will of course be cancel. You could do it yes and no, but you have to change it here. If anything exists in one space, you always have to change it everywhere else or the code will not work. That's why you have search and replace function. However, don't quickly use the search and replace button, because if I were to look for the word pipe and want to change the word pipe to something else, pipe is also in pipe num. So remember that. Don't change something you don't want to change. You have to very much pay attention to what you're doing. If you hit cancel, dialog box goes away, nothing happens. An if command is pretty much, well, duh, it's if. If something happens, then something else happens. If somebody clicked on the OK button, pipe num, which is the number stored up here, will become the number that the person types in after in a new dialog box that appears if you had pressed OK. If they had pressed cancel, which is the else command here, the number of pipes will always equal 1. So there will always be at least 1 pipe in here. If you hit cancel, it does not spawn 0 pipes, it spawns 1. Note that. That is important. So we'll do it right here as an example. How many pipes would you like? We'll type in 5. Okay? If I go to Maya, it should have 5 pipes. It doesn't. There's a specific reason to this, and it's how I wrote it. So this sets the amount of pipes. It does not spawn the pipes. It just says, hey, for later use, the number 5 is the amount of pipes I would like. Does the same thing with cylinders. As you can see, most of the dialog box is exactly the same. That is the point. You can reuse stuff. Cylinders, it accepts the number of cylinders. Was this 3 steps or 4? Okay, 4. And again, I'm going into detail because each project will be its own video where I go into the detail of why I did the things I did. So I did this specifically because rather than spawn the number of cylinders and spawn the number of pipes, I wanted it to be, it sets the numbers first, then it creates them. And here's the reason why. Lambert. A Lambert is a color. It is a shade. Let me rephrase that. It is a shader. A shader is how a color exists in your world. If I were to make a trophy, I would want a blend shader on it, because blend is a special shader where while you can put any color into it, it will reflect light. So anything with a blend looks metallic. So I would put a blend shader of any color on a metal or sword or something like that. A Lambert is just a solid color. It's like a wall. It's like a blanket. It's non-reflective, non-shiny. It's just a plain color. The number of Lambert that I need is equal to the number of pipes I made that were stored up here, and the number of cylinders stored here, thanks to this line of code. This is when it gets a little weird. I'm going to check real quick if QuickTime is still recording. For I equals 2. I is just a random number. It is a placeholder. It's x, and you can just go x equals 1 and then x plus plus and all that. The reason why we start with 2 is very, very specific. As you can see, when I make an object of any kind in Maya, when I initially start, resize this puppy, it's gray. That is Lambert 1. You do not want to fuck with Lambert 1. Ever. Don't do it. Because if you mess with Lambert 1, what happens is anything that spawns later on in the project, let's say somebody wants to add a random sphere, and you have set Lambert 1 to something new, like let's say blue, and they click the sphere, that would be a blue sphere instantly. Because everything starts with Lambert 1. No touchy Lambert 1. So you start with 2. Because we're starting with 1 higher than the normal, we have to end with 1 higher than the normal. Now how a for loop works is it has a start point, it has an end point, and it has the increments. So it says start 2, end at a random number, each time go up by 1. Plus plus means plus 1. Don't ask why we put plus plus instead of plus 1. It's easier, it makes sense. Since a Lambert is a color, and we're talking about computers, in Maya, colors work on a red, green, blue scenario. Very much like a TV, if you watch the newest second to newest slow-mo guys video at the time of this recording, which is about how TVs work, pixels work on a red, green, and blue situation. If everything's set to 0, the color is black. If everything is set to, in normal terms, it would be 255. In Maya, it's 1. It's a 0 to 1 scale. On normal computers, or if you go to your TV and you start messing around with the TV colors, it's 0 to 225, 55, it's one of those. But here it's 0 to 1. So, for any color we want, we have to set a red, a green, and a blue. All zeros being black, all ones being white. If I were to do all red, if I were to do 1 in the red and 1 in the green, I would get yellow. I'm like, what the fuck are my colors? I am fucking stupid. But you get what I mean. So what it does, and again, this stuff, you don't have to remember this stuff. Just note that this is stuff that happens. This is stuff that, your teacher will hopefully give you, and you can just copy and paste for the rest of your life, and you should be fine. You have a float, and as we talked about earlier, floats are decimals, because you need a decimal to have a number between 0 and 1. Rand means it's random. So what this is doing is that for each separate instance of I, starting with the number 2, it will set a random number between 0 and 1, a random decimal point for red. It will set a random decimal point for green. It will set a random decimal point for blue. It will then create a shader. It will create the new Lambert, and it will name the Lambert number whatever. So starting with 2, so it's going to be called Lambert 2. Yellow means it's not going to be fucked with, and it's in quotation marks. White specifically means that is a variable. It will always change, but it will still be saved. So we'll go Lambert 2 as SG, Lambert 3 SG, Lambert 4 SG, because as we see from the for loop, the increment goes up by 1 each time. This line, I don't know. Don't mess with it. Unless you need to change something like, if you're going to make a shader into a blend, if you want to randomly change the shader into a blend, change that to blend, change that to blend, change each word in this for thing as a blend. Now this is extra credit because as far as I remember, the extra credit was to have it completely random colors. You didn't have to color the cylinders and pipes. I did. And I believe this was one part of our final? I think we got we had to do at least 3 of 5 projects. And I did the fan, the roller coaster tracks, and I think this was the last one. It's like save. What is this called? Arg. Most likely one of my finals. Now that you have a Lambert, and it's in the hyper shade, which is up here. Holy crap, I still remember a lot of this after a year. Haha. This is where all your Lamberts and all of your other shaders and colors are saved. Now you have to, it's called Lambert 2, and you have an actual thing called Lambert 2, it's still gray. So now you have to set it to that random number up here, that random red, that random green. I guess that's the blue. Haha, it's all screwed. But you see what I mean. So what I personally do is I pre-make the colors. Now, if you want to do a for loop where it makes it, and then it makes a Lambert, like you could easily put all of this down here, but then you'd also have to have it down here, because all that would do is if you put it in this for loop, that would only be giving random colors to the pipes. If you want the cylinders to do it, you would have to do it here. So instead what I do is I make all of the colors early. I pretty much make a bunch of crayons. And then in the pipe for loop, I just have this one line that says, this is pipe 3, color that motherfucker with crayon labeled 3. That's what that one line does. Everything else was preset up here. It makes all the colors for the pipes and the cylinders, because that's what we had it set to. Starting at 2, because we don't want to mess with Lambert 1, like we said. And if we have it down here that it will just do I. If we started at 1, the first pipe would be gray. We don't want that. For number 2, because of this line here, we don't want to mess with stuff. 2, pipe num plus 1, so if we do 5 pipes, it will go from 2 to 6. That's still 5 pipes. I++. It will set a random x coordinate between -40 and 40. The reason why I did this is very specific, why I chose -40 and 40. If we go back to the plane, I specifically made the plane 80 to 80. 80 units by 80 units. That doesn't mean it's 160 units long, because it goes to -80 and 80 on the x-axis. Starting at the origin, both sides added together, both going to the left from the origin and going to the right from the origin, will equal 80. And it has to be an equal distance. So that's divided by 2 because there's 2 sides, a left side and a right side of the square. That's 40 and 40. So -40 and 40. Think about just like an XY graph on a piece of paper, and now draw a box on it. That's pretty much what you're doing. If you draw a square on a piece of graph paper, so that way it's symmetrical on all axes or whatever, the distance between the 2 sides divided by 2 would be the distance between the center of the graph paper and one of the sides. I know, I'm going into weird math shit, but that's just to explain why I did what I did. So a random number between -40 and 40. It will then make the pipe. And they're all the same size. I didn't set a random height. I didn't set a random radius for the pipe. I didn't set a random whatever the hell T is. Yada yada blah blah. I could easily type in a completely new line of code that just says int, let's say R equals rand, and then give the least it could be and the maximum it could be. I could type that. I'm not going to, but I'm just showing you how simple it actually is. It then moves to that random x, that random z, and it moves up 2.5 units. The reason why I do that is, if I quickly show it, I will make a plane, and I will make a pipe. And I'll zoom in. The pipe is kind of sticking out of the bottom of the plane, so it has to have an initial up. That 2.5 just easily makes it look, let's see if I'm doing this right. Yes, I am. That up tiny bit just makes it look like it's completely flat. So it sets the height in the random x and z, so it randomly spawns somewhere on the floor. That is the plane. The gray plane, mind you. It then sets the color. It's taking the crayon and fucking coloring the pipe. And then it makes it a active rigid body. Which means, like I said, there's an on switch and an off switch for rigid stuff. It's active and passive. Active means if you hit it, it will move. Same thing down here. The only difference is that it's I plus pipe num. The reason why I do that is kind of simple. If I have items, if I have squares 1, 2, 3, and I have circles 4, 5, 6, and I want circle 4, which is technically circle 1, but it is the fourth item being made because I'm making squares first. Square 1, square 2, square 3, circle 1, circle 2, circle 3. And I want circle 1 to be the fourth thing colored. I have to take into account that the first 3 things colored were the squares. So the fourth item, being circle 1, is 1 plus the 3 from the squares. The circle 2 will be the fifth item colored. It'll be 2 plus the 3 because we've already done the squares. That's what that is for. And then, of course, it still makes it an active body. This fun bit. Right now, I'm just going to show off what we have. Let's say I make 10 pipes and I'll make 4 cylinders. And then I minimize this. And I have 10 pipes and I have 4 cylinders. They are clipping into each other a tiny bit. That is going to happen. I did not make a way for that to not happen. That's a bit harder to do. And once that animation happens, if I were to have the cube come out, that could become a problem where this whole thing crashes. Though to be fair, because I'm doing QuickTime, this whole thing could possibly still fucking crash. Which is terrifying, but we'll see what happens. The only tutorial videos that have swears in them. Most likely, probably. So, I've now made a death cube. It is a huge death cube. I could easily show off just the death cube. Let's do 2 and 2. Oh god. That's not right. That's not right at all. Oh, that's because I didn't move it yet. But yeah, you can see. The death cube is kind of big. Because if I move it... If I move it... What the fuck? Oh, it's because I'm not... God damn it. Why do you not want to move? Well, this is like not wanting to work with me tonight. Okay, we'll do this the other way, which is translate 90. As you can see, the death cube is kind of big. Nothing wants to work. Maya does this. Maya is a very, very fickle thing. We had it crash on the teacher's end. We had it crash on the student's end. And we had some of the highest tech PCs possible, and these things were crashing, and Maya did not work half the time. Maya is fickle. The fact that this is the first thing to happen tonight, so far recording this whole video about this all, is actively surprising. It then moves far away for a reason. Now, this is when it gets a little complicated, and I might talk about this more in a later video, but the quick version is that there are 2 ways to animate something in Maya. The first is with keyframes. That's your, drawing, it's your flip book. It is saying, on this page of the flip book, the ball will look like this. It's squished. Think about the ball bouncing flip book, the most famous flip book ever. Each one of those is a page. What you're doing is you are setting up the pages on each frame, and you're hitting the S button. That is a keyframe. That is you specifically taking the image that is currently on your computer in this lovely little window over here, and you are drawing it onto the paper. Now you can easily go over here and you can do set key, so that way not all of them are red in case you want to change something much later on, so you can change only one thing at a time instead of the whole block. But that'll be a thing for another day. The other thing you can do in order to animate something in Maya is expressions, and expressions are coding your animation. Instead of you taking a snapshot and copying it onto the paper in the flipbook, you are telling the paper, hey paper, move the ball on each page 2 inches to the right than where it was on the previous page. That's what an expression is. So the expression is specifically saying, hey, on each piece of paper, I want it to rotate on the y-axis by the time, which is the frame number, times 50. So on the first page of the flip note, I want it to be at 50 degrees. On the second page of the flip note, I want it to be at 100 degrees, and so on and so forth. And this final little bastard makes it a rigid body, or a passive body, which means it will interact with stuff, it will not be interacted with. AKA, it will knock shit over, but none of that stuff will affect it, and it will not slow down. AKA, the death cube cometh. I tried putting these in these two specific lines in opposite order before, making the expression after it became a passive body. Maya does not like that. There is no specific reason why. For some people it does work. For some people it doesn't work. Maya is a fickle bitch. So finally, now that we have ended this lovely this lesson for today, or this trip down memory lane, let's see what happens. I will go with low numbers because I don't want my computer to blow up while recording this. So we'll do 4 and we will do 3. We have, thank God, nothing spawned on top of each other. We have 4 pipes. We have 3 cylinders. As we specified, they are all random colors. If I go, I don't even have to do this. I can just scroll over and go to Lambert. And where is that thing I want? In here. That's not what I wanted. I want it in here. As you can see, it's for some reason it's set to fucking HSV. So if I were to go do something smart like that, you can see that it works. It is there. They are each a random number. Now you can set it because Maya also allows you to be flexible in your units and everything. You can go down to, is it here? No, where the hell is it? There is a button somewhere down here. Again, there are so many buttons. So many fucking buttons. You will not remember all of them. You can try. One of the buttons down here, maybe I do it on here. Play last? No. Something down here is like the quote-unquote settings menu. There are a lot of settings menu, but one of the things you can do is actively, right now, this whole thing, like, you know, the mass and all that is in Maya units. You can set it to feet. You can set it to centimeters. You can set it to metric or Kelvin or whatever the fuck you want. It is yours to customize as you want. So finally, we have these lovely pipes. And we have the death cube. And it has expressions on it. So you know what's going to happen when I hit that lovely little play button? My laptop goes boom. Or you see some pipes go flying. It's that simple. Now you go, oh, that was nothing, and it was 110 lines, and technically it wasn't. It was 109, and technically it wasn't that, because you have to remember, I have the red lines, and I have the yellow lines. And if you think that's crazy, like I said, you can do it in any way. Nothing is wrong. We had to, I will make the next video about this. The next video in the series, the wall with the window. Again, it's all about doing it the way you want to do it. I like leaving notes and telling myself, you completed this step, so that way I know here's step 1 done, here's step 2, or here's step 2 done, here's the extra credit done, here's step 3 done, blah, blah, blah. That's how I do it. You don't have to do it that way. So next time, I will show you all the wall. I hope this helped you in some way with a lesson you had in school or whatever. Let's Play Princess, signing off.